quarterback of the Kansas State Wildcats, Big 12 champion Will Howard.
So excited to announce Kansas City Sports Network's new soccer channel. They're taking advantage of a look that they utilized earlier in the game to show that jet sweep motion.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise.
You kind of root for guys to have those moments, and that was certainly a big moment.
Welcome into Mizzou, That's Who, your podcast from Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network.
Welcome, everybody, to the Border War podcast.
Welcome back. Another episode of A No Season Podcast.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
The trenches here on KC Sports Network. I am your host, Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Nick Leckey and Brien Hanley. Very excited to be hanging out tonight. If you're watching this episode live, shout out to you. You're the late night crew. You enjoy the B-side. Love it. This KCSN After Dark. Love to see it. So thank you all for tuning in live. If you're listening after the fact, obviously, we appreciate you guys as well. But Nick, how you doing? How was your week?
It was a good week. You know, it's funny you see After Dark. I immediately think the Pac-12 After Dark, and is some of the most glorious football ever, and just wackiness. And it's just right up my alley too. So fun fact though, when you live in Arizona and it's on West Coast time, because they refuse, just like Indianapolis or parts of Indiana, they refuse to honor spring forward or fall back. So it was weird though that the games would be over at like 10 o'clock at night. You're like, this is weird. I want to go to sleep with something on. This is weird, like some 77-55, Cal versus Washington State score.
I love it. We could talk about the Pac-12 probably a long time. We're trying to stick to professional. Well, hang on, I almost said professional football, but they're all professional players now. It seems like. Right. Big B, how are you doing? How was your week? How things going down in Texas?
I mean, it's still blazing hot. Although, like I mentioned before the show, I mean, we had a cold front come in, so it's been 95 and 97 the last 2 days, but it's going back to 107 for the next, I would say, 6 days. But other than that, it's been good, man. I was up in KC on Sunday and Monday, so it stormed like crazy on Sunday, which I don't even know what rain looks like anymore. I have no idea what that looks like. So that was good. And then it was like 78 degrees on Monday. I'm like, I can get used to this. And then I came home. So yeah, there it is.
It's balmy. It's New England weather here in KC right now. It's beautiful.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
I was out at training camp on Wednesday. Beautiful morning. It was about mid 60s. A nice light breeze coming across. So it was a great morning. Probably one of those mornings that those guys like were happy that they were in pads, right? Like you're like, okay, I'll put the pads on today. I'm okay with that. Not those 100-degree days that they've had out there in St. Joe. But no, it's been training camp wrapping up. The season is rapidly approaching, which I think is absolutely insane. It feels like the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl a couple of weeks ago. But we got a lot of things to get to on today's show. Obviously, we're going to wrap things up with Blind Nil. We're going to talk about some of the toughest divisions to win in the NFL. Nick wants to talk about the Cowboys. Are they for real? Could they be for real? Maybe. And I've got a little bit. I want to talk about the margin of error in the AFC because I think that that window is very tight. But let's start with Big B. What you brought to the table this week, what you wanted to talk about. I'll give you the keys. The floor is yours.
Toughest divisions. Look, I mean, obviously it's subjective, but when you put, your pen to paper and you think about it, it's like, okay, it's the NFC East. That's one where you got the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Commanders, and the Giants. Everybody finished with at least a 500 record last year. 3 teams made the playoffs. Now, NFC is a little easier to make the playoffs in, but 3 teams made the playoffs. All good teams in that division. Then you got the AFC East. You have the Bills, the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Jets.
Jets, yeah.
So tough division. Everybody is all over the Jets. I mean, I don't know if people have been watching, Hard Knocks, but as you guys know, I mean, I've seen that offensive line, and looks pathetic. So I don't know how good they're going to be. So, but still a really good division. And then the one that I'm partial to is the AFC North. You got the Steelers, the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Browns. And, although the Browns have always been the Browns, if you look at their roster, the Browns have a top 7, top 8 roster in the National Football League. It's incredible. Now, are they going to play that way? They usually don't. But if you just man for man, roster for roster, the Browns should be good. The Steelers, they should be good. I think the Ravens may win the division, and the Bengals, if Burrow's healthy, which I think he's getting there, the Bengals are going to be good too. So I still say it's the AFC North is the toughest division.
Interesting. Nick, your thoughts?
I think the NFC, it's you're right. I mean, there's really no other team. Like, there's absolutely no other team in the NFC East besides maybe Dallas or Philly. Because you look at San Francisco, do you really believe Brock Purdy's your guy? Like, do you really believe he's going to be able to put 28, 35 points on the board? The offense, you think he's got that command of it now? Even with, local boy Christian McCaffrey, Stanford, Palo Alto connection. I just think the NFC, it's Philly, Dallas. Really, honestly, only 2 teams in the NFC that are worth a damn. And to me, if you're looking at the AFC, which is just absolutely stacked, I'd have to say the AFC East. One, you have the Bills. We know what the Bills are, right? They're also motivated with, Damar Hamlin back at it, doing his thing, which is fantastic. And then you look at Miami, right? They got loaded defense, right? I love, Christian Wilkins off the edge, defensive end, the captain, the team leader, getting it done. And a healthy Tua. Hopefully he's not going through head injuries like he was last year. Got that down. And then I just like, honestly, Mike McDaniels. I think he's a really good coach, and I think he's a leader. He's your new era of coaches that, that will, yell at other coaches and not throw other coaches under the bus like some older other coaches we talked about a couple weeks. And then if you look at New England, right? Look at New England. I'll have a blind nil on New England. But I kind of like where they're going, right? I think they got a solid defense, with Judah. Matthew Judon at a linebacker. I love him there for sure. And then they got, Hunter Henry. I think, he's a diamond in the rough. I think it's his time. Him and Mac Jones are going to connect, get some things going. And then if you look at the Jets, I mean, sure, the offensive line is sus, but Robert Saleh as the head coach, I think that's fantastic. I think he's a great head coach. And then you got the offensive and defensive rookies of the year, Sauce Gardner, and then Garrett Wilson. So, and then add in Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest pocket passers known to man in the history of the game. I love that combo. And I love what I'm reading about Aaron Rodgers. He is actually going around sitting with different people. Because I could see him being the type of cat to alienate a team by being, hanging out with his Hollywood friends and this, that. But he's like getting in there, and he looks like he wants to win and mentor those young quarterbacks. I think it's cool. So, yeah, AFC East, definitely the toughest division.
That AFC East is pretty stacked. And Brian, you brought up too how the Browns, like, talent wise, you look at that roster, you're like, wow, like they got a lot of potential there. It's almost the same thing with the Jets, right? Like, you look at the Jets, you're like, wow. I mean, those two teams are very similar to me. Obviously, I think Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson is. You probably argue at this point in his career, maybe. But I'm interested to see the Aaron Rodgers experiment, putting him back with Nathaniel Hackett. That could be something that could be interesting with him. But I really liked what you said about the AFC North. I think that one is a very sneaky, tough division for Burrow, especially when you look at it from a Chiefs perspective, right? If you got Joe Burrow having to fight in his own division to win the division, it's gonna be a little bit tougher on the Bengals than it will be for the Chiefs, where we think that the Chiefs can probably win their division a little bit easier than the Bengals could win their division. Right. And it's really interesting to think about that. But you're right. I mean, we talk about you brought up the NFC East. That's probably the only one worth a darn in the NFC, I would say.
Oh yeah.
The NFC South is pathetic. The NFC North is probably going to be won by the Lions, and the NFC West is like probably the Niners. Like, more than likely will be the Niners. Unless Kyler Murray has some sort of coming out party, which I doubt it, because there's a new COD out. So I mean, he's not going to have any coming out party. I guess it should be mentioned. The Vikings are also in the NFC North. I guess that it's a 2-horse race in the NFC North. I'll say that. But it looks like in these other ones, there's going to be runaways. Sans the South, it's going to be whoever's the worst of the best of the worst is going to kind of come out on top of that one. But I think I agree with Nick in thinking the AFC East. When you just look at the Bills, the Jets, the Dolphins, just those three teams right there, you're talking about a lot of firepower, a lot of offensive firepower. I think it's funny that is it the Dolphins that signed Eli Apple after Jalen Ramsey went down. They said this is what's going to be the fix. Now they put Eli Apple and Tyreek Hill on the same team. Those guys don't get along. So that's going to be an interesting locker room mix there. But I have the Bills having to play the Dolphins twice and the Jets twice and the Patriots twice. I guess you shouldn't necessarily count out the Patriots all that much. A Bill Belichick coach team is never really truly out of it. That's not easy. And that's not easy at all. And I think that, like, looking at that division, you can logically, just like you can for the AFC North, make an argument for each one of those teams to win the division. And it's not too far-fetched either. Like, if you could spend 5 minutes talking to me about a team, and then I'd be like, oh, you're right, that they're probably going to win it. Then you spend the next 5 minutes talking about another team, I'm like, yeah, you know what? They actually might win it. So I think that one is the most up in the air in terms of that. But Big B, you mentioned, like, the Ravens. Like, they have just, like, this rejuvenated roster. Lamar's back. He's paid. They've got actual guys there. This is, like, probably the Ravens' year to do something. And if they don't, they might be in trouble.
Well, I think that I've mentioned it before. I think Lamar Jackson, if healthy, he's got to stay healthy, which I think he will. You know, the last two injuries, everybody says he's injury prone, but he's gotten hurt on fluke plays where he was in the pocket. It wasn't out running. And that's where everybody says he can't run. He's taking all these hits. He didn't get hurt that way. So, you know, I think he's going to compete with Mahomes for the MVP. I think Mahomes is going to win it again. But I think Lamar Jackson has a big bounce back year. And that's why I think the Ravens are probably going to win that division, because you know they're going to bring their defense. They're going to bring it. And if he stays healthy, and if those weapons are – if they don't even have to be out of this world. If they're just decent, they're going to bring a whole new element that Baltimore hasn't even seen since Lamar Jackson has been there. So I just think that they are really good. But you look, I could talk about the Steelers till the end of time. So,
it's only a matter of time for you brought up Pittsburgh.
You know, the Steelers, I'm telling you, you look at their schedule, you look at who they got coming back. They improved their offensive line, which has been the Achilles heel for the last 3 years. I'm telling you, man, look at the Steelers. Now, it's tough to be a really good team when you have the fourth best quarterback in your division.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost impossible for you to be good when your guy is literally the fourth best quarterback. But that just goes to show you how good the other quarterbacks are. Yeah. On top of that, though, the Steelers, I think they have a good roster. Plus, I believe without a doubt that we have the best coach in that division. So with Mike Tomlin. Yeah. So it's tough. It's going to be tough. But I'm just telling you, just mark my words. We'll be there at the end. We'll be around. We're just going to hang around. We'll be there at the end. We'll be there at the end.
I think the way it goes, too, that it's going to be tough for Mahomes to repeat with MVP because you're always compared to your previous season. So he set the bar so damn high that he's going to have some crazy clutch plays, some more insane trickery. Whereas the road to MVP for Lamb is so much easier because, right, the media wants something new. Right. They want to re-engage the fans. They want to spread the love around with the MVP. And for Lamar just to have a really good year, that would put him in prime spot to do MVP, you know, outside of Josh Allen having, you know, a tremendous year as well, too. But it'll be hard for Mahomes to repeat just based off the fact that here's what you're comparing it to. And it's not other quarterbacks. It's to his previous self. Right. It's like why Heisman winners can't win it back to back is because then they expect even more so instead of new season, new rules. It's not how it goes.
Right. And you talk about the MVP award, MVP a very narrative-driven award. Another thing that's very narrative-driven are the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Nick wanted to talk about them, so we're going to talk about them coming up next. We're going to take a break first, but we'll be right back on the other side to talk about them boys.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
To Outside the Trenches here on KC Sports Network, presented by our great friends at Five Farms Irish Cream Liqueur. It's not quite there, Big B, but we're getting close to coffee tailgate season. We're getting real close to it, and I'm ready for it. I think the first kickoff for the Missouri Tigers is on a Thursday night. So I won't be drinking any Five Farms. Well, maybe I could drink just straight Five Farms because that stuff goes down smooth pretty good. I might be able to convince myself to do it in a milkshake or something like that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
That would probably be the way to do it. And you might want to pour yourself a glass of Five Farms while we talk about them Cowboys, Nick.
They're back. Cowboys are back. Texas is back. Crown them all. Crown them all. They're ready to go. No, to me, it's like if first of all, look at the roster, right? You got Micah Parsons, Van Der Esch. I love that. I love that on defense, right? You got Micah Parsons. You got everything you need, and leading them all, Dan Quinn, right? Who led the notorious Legion of Boom back in the day with Seattle. So he knows how to manage personalities, and if you give him that person where he can be, this is my ace in a hole. This is like my Richard Sherman. This is my Bobby Wagner type guy, right? This is my guy who can get it, and he's a disruptor. He's throwing future Hall of Famer Tyron Smith to the ground in one-on-one pass pro, and Tyron Smith's his elbow brace is probably my knee brace. That dude is massive. He's a massive left tackle. So the Cowboys have it together, and Deuce Vaughn as your backup running back to Pollard. And Pollard's legit. I love Pollard. Pollard to me is one of the shiftiest running backs ever. And you got two of them back to back with this offense line. They just re-signed Zach Martin. And then look at the schedule. Their test is week 2 versus the Jets, and then week 9 at Philly.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, it's just crazy. Things are lining up for them boys.
I don't know. I mean, look.
You just don't want to hear it because you're in Dallas right now.
I mean, I have to hear it all the time. I mean, there is a buzz about the city, though. I will say that. Now, there is sort of this is a football crazy city, so there's always going to be a buzz when the season's about to start. But it's a little different this year. And I'll admit, the Cowboys are good. You look at what they have. They are good. They improved. They have a legitimate chance. The one thing that a lot of people say, and this is to his credit, everybody complains about Dak. And they said, oh, he's terrible, he's bad. And I'm like, if you just look at the numbers, that's been not necessarily great in the playoffs. I'll give you that. He hadn't been clutch in the playoffs. But he's not a guy that just turns the football over all the time. That's not what he does. Yeah. I go, that was an outlier last year, because all the previous years, that's not what he did. So if he gets back to the way that he plays with what the kind of weapons and how they're wanting to move the football and how they're going to be able to play defense, because I think that's where the strength really is on that defense. The Cowboys got something. They got something. I was talking about rosters earlier. The Cowboys have a top 5 roster in the NFL. I mean, without question, without even thinking about it, the Cowboys absolutely have a top 5 roster in the NFL. Now, will it play that way? I don't know. But they've got it. And if they play well, the Cowboys got something, man. They do.
It's been the biggest thing for them, right? I feel like they've had a lot of potential these last few years.
Yeah.
Especially trying to get the most as they could out of that Zeke contract. And then they have that weight finally lifted off their shoulders as he signed with the Patriots. We didn't even talk about Zeke going to the Patriots in our section when we were talking about the AFC East.
No.
But because I don't think it matters all that much, truthfully. And that's the thing is, Tony Pollard was outperforming him on a much cheaper contract.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's where we get into the whole conversation about running backs, right? But the Cowboys are interesting. They're in that division with the Eagles. Will they get into the playoffs? Probably. I would assume that they get a wild card spot if they don't win the division, right? If something does happen where they do, we'll expect the Eagles to be very good. And if something happens where the Eagles, have injuries, God forbid, but anything else happens where maybe the Cowboys outperform where they're projected to be right now, but both very good teams, I think they'll both get into the playoffs. It's going to be what's going to be for the playoffs, right? You mentioned it, Big B. It's going to be playoff Dak and how that performs. I know that Dak probably has a lot of expectation. Well, he does have a lot of expectations on him, especially in the market that he's in. And he hasn't necessarily lived up to what they want or expect for him to do in Dallas. I think as you mentioned, they look like a good team. They look like a good team on paper, but that only takes you so far. Expectations are high for them. You can't blame people for being excited about the Cowboys. It seems like the boys are back, but I've lived in the show. I've grown up in Missouri. I've lived in Missouri my whole life. I'm from the show me state. Got to show it to me. I got to see something from it before I'm going to actually be like, okay, let's start taking the Cowboys seriously. So until I see it, I'm going to hold off on declaring on hitting that we back button.
I gotcha. Nick, let me ask you this question. The one thing that I also think can hold the Cowboys back is actually Mike McCarthy.
Yes.
I don't know how much of a motivator that he actually is, man. Look, you got to be a leader of men in the National Football League. You do. You know that. And I just don't see that out of him anymore. I don't know what he was in Green Bay and all those years ago, but since he's been at the Cowboys, I see a lot of cheesy stuff that the guys just don't buy into anymore. I mean, I'll let you speak more about it, but I don't see that motivation, and that might be something that holds them back.
Yeah, I think it's difficult too with Mike McCarthy because it's like, was he just riding coattails of Aaron Rodgers all those years, right? And is that the reason why he was such a good coach? And he had to give up the play calling duties last year too.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got all these explosive people on offense, and you're not getting it done. It's crazy to me. Like, what are you doing? Is it like, are they a defensive team and that's how they have to play? Like, do they have, I mean, they have the firepower to do it. They have the offensive line to do it. And it's like, yeah, that's my biggest concern with Dallas is their head coach. And then, how's he going to call games? And then is he going to inspire those troops, man? It's like, if Dallas is smart, they would have got back and they would have fought Denver for Sean Payton. Because that's you need. You need a guy who's going to have a strong pulse on his team, who's going to know how to let his players play, let his men be men, right? Let them go out, do their thing. It's like, hey, no curfew Friday night, but you better show up Saturday. You better do your thing Sunday. When it comes time to play. So yeah, Mike McCarthy is your really only real question mark on that Cowboys team.
Yeah. It's going to be tricky. It's like you mentioned, is like he came into the job and that was his thing, was offense. Yeah. And he didn't even get to call plays. They made him keep an offensive coordinator. And it's like, I mean, are you just taking the job for a paycheck to say you were the coach of the Dallas Cowboys? Or are you really putting the input of me on this team? And I guess we'll get to see that this year because now he's going to call the plays for the first time. We'll see what happens, but I don't know, man. I think it may end in a disaster. I'm not hoping. Well, yeah, I'm hoping that.
Yeah, you're hoping. Just be honest with yourself.
Yeah, I'm hoping that.
It's tough living in Dallas when you're not a Cowboys fan.
It was so glorious. I'll go down to the Star. I live 10 minutes from the Star. I'll go there and take pictures. Oh, it'll be great.
Flag will be hanging upside down. They'll be in a moment of disarray, distress. No, it's super interesting with the Cowboys. You mentioned Mike McCarthy, but I mean, I don't know if I blame them for not letting him call plays when like Kellen Moore was there. He seems to be a really good offensive coordinator, who is now with the Chargers, which pretty good free agent acquisition for the Chargers, because that seems to be their one big bugaboo is offensive play calling. They got now. I think Joe Lombardi was their offensive coordinator before. Now they go to Kellen Moore, which that's a big step up. But you talk about the margin of error in the NFC East. I kind of talked about it with the Cowboys and the Eagles, but in the AFC, it's literally in every division. So like to try to get that number 1 seed, trying to get the number 2 seed, the margin of error is so small. And I thought there was a really interesting a thread from Warren Sharp on Twitter. I don't know if you guys saw this, just kind of about how the Bills and the Chiefs have had two of the most dynamic and explosive offenses in the last three or 4 years. Like, but one team has gone to 3 Super Bowls in the last 4 years. One team hasn't made it out of the divisional round in the last 2 years. And I think that is so interesting how they can have such large offenses, such powerful offenses, but the margin of error in, I think it was the goal line offense is what it was in the red zone for the Bills, which was really their Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And what it is down there on the goal line, that's how small it is in the AFC. Is like if your goal line offense isn't, average, you're not getting past the divisional round. And I find that wildly fascinating when you look at the AFC and all the teams that have in it with Joe Burrow, you just talk about the quarterbacks, even the good quarterbacks that were drafted this year seemingly went to the AFC. Bryce Young, obviously he went to Carolina. CJ Stroud went in the AFC. Anthony Richardson in the AFC. I think those two guys are going to be pretty decent quarterbacks. You talk about all the other young guys, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. All of those are AFC guys. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts just on the margin of error, because it feels like every year, Nick, I know you and I have talked about this a lot on previous podcasts. It just seemingly shrinks from you have about 5 plays a game that make a difference now to about 3, to it seemingly sometimes it's about 1 play a game that makes a difference. That is really that difference between winning and losing. It just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller for these teams in the AFC.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a round ball; it's an oval ball, right? So it bounces funny, and the slightest miscalculation on a throw, the slightest bad up can go from 6 points to an interception. And to me, when you look at dynamic offenses, of course, they're both dynamic, Buffalo and Kansas City the past couple of years. But to me, when you look at like total yards and offensive performance, that's like asking somebody how much you bench. And then when you look at, what's your red zone efficiency, how often are you getting into the red zone and how often are you getting a touchdown? That to me is the power clean of everything. That's the true litmus test of how strong a team is if you have the gumption, the play calling, you're not going to overcomplicate things. And what's your red zone play calls? And you look at the Chiefs, when they pull out all their trick plays in the red zone, because that's where you need it, man. That's where you need that little edge to gain to get that touchdown. Look at the Rose Bowl parade, right? Like, that play where they did the trickery, and it's like you don't need trickery, from your own 40-yard line. You need trickery in the red zone. Look at how they beat Philly with they were using motion concepts, right? Get people in a lull, and then you got 2 guys wide open. Right. And that's the sort of things that, you look back at Mike McCarthy, is he able to do that like an Andy Reid? Right. And it's like one of those things like, do you have that, are you really studying film or are you just watching old cartoon reruns, late night in the office? And that's what it comes down to.
You're exactly right, man. And especially, Tucker, when you talked about the margin of error, just think about this. Tyler Huntley for Baltimore was literally a quarterback sneak away from beating the Bengals in the opening round of the playoffs if he doesn't get the ball stripped from him at the inch line. Yeah. And then Cincinnati runs it back for a touchdown. That's how they win the game, because the Ravens had figured out how to stop the Bengals, and the Bengals could not move the football on them. And if that doesn't happen, I mean, the Bengals get beat, and who knows who ends up against the Chiefs. Is it the Ravens? I mean, it's crazy on how all of that would have played out. So things are so close, and the margin of error is so tiny. Nick is 100% right. You don't need trick plays, from the 30 to the 30. You just don't. You're moving the football, you're running your offense, but it's just like you said, Nick, in the Super Bowl. Just a simple motion was enough to confuse the Eagles twice. And it wasn't the motion that confused them. It was because the Chiefs had done so many different things on that motion. That's what confused them. And you saw it. They were talking and screaming and pointing at one another. The guy just literally turns the other direction, and nobody runs with him twice wide open. So the margin of error and what people do is incredible. And you got to that's where I give a lot of coaches credit, because when you know the difference between the good ones and the bad ones, because just like you said, they are up watching film, and just that little subtlety. You know what? We're going to back out and we're going to go the opposite direction on this motion. We're going to run 16 different plays off of this same formation and motion. That's when you know the good ones from the bad ones. And the Chiefs got a good one. The Chiefs got a good one, man.
That's what I think too makes Andy Reid so great, right? And I think that Nick Sirianni, that Eagles coaching staff last year, I mean, both the coordinators became head coaches. Like, those are good coaches over there.
Yeah.
Like, those are good coaches in Philadelphia. They thought they had it figured out, right? They're like, okay, we can pass off this motion. We can pass it off, and we can be a whole lot quicker if we can pass it off here as they're going across. Another guy just takes him. And Andy Reid, they caught on to that and said, okay, if you're going to do that, they already had a counter ready. They said, okay, if you're going to do this, we know we're going to do that. It's like 3 steps ahead. And I think it does come back to coaching. And I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest difference between all of these things and all these teams in the AFC. When you look at the coaching, Andy Reid is leaps and bounds ahead of Zach Taylor. Sean McDermott, I think, is a very phenomenal head coach. He's not as good as Andy Reid. You know, I think Mike Tomlin's probably the second best coach in the AFC personally. I really love what he was able to do. Or I just love him as a coach personally. But I do think that there are some really good coaches, but like Andy Reid and that coaching staff has really set them apart to kind of make that margin of error a little larger for the Chiefs because of the coaching and the play calling and kind of what they can scheme up. Nick, I love how you put it as they're watching film. They're watching the 1806 Rose Bowl or 1928, whatever. You know, we were watching Iowa State play Oklahoma in 1928 to try to figure out what they're going to do next. They're not watching, you know, hanging out with their families.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not a shot at Andy Reid. That's not a shot at
No.
Andy
I
Reid.
know what you're saying. No, they're in the office. They're actually working. Yeah, and they're not watching old Yosemite Sam reruns and things like that. You know, so yeah, exactly. And it makes sense too. And there's so much depth, right? And I think there's depth. And you look at the Eagles in the Super Bowl. They had that one play where they thought they're going to go deep down the middle, and then they tried it again. It's like, no, we're on you. Like, what else do you have?
Right.
And they didn't have anything else. They had nothing else. That was it. And they had the quarterback sneak, right? I mean, that's good for 2 yards. You know, that'll get you to the Super Bowl. Talk about red zone efficiency. Just quarterback sneak it.
Insane.
Yeah, that was nuts.
From the 20.
Yeah. Can you believe they didn't like create a rule again? Like they brought that up. Like teams were like, hey, can we make this illegal again? And teams were like, nah, that's fine.
Yeah. Because no one can do it like them. It's amazing. Like, no, like if you've ever played O-line, you know how difficult it is to run a quarterback sneak when they're just into the gap and they're diving at your legs, and they just got it consistently. It's like they must have been watching rugby film for scrums.
Yeah, absolutely. They had to be and you said now it doesn't hurt that your quarterback can squat 600 pounds.
Yes.
So that part doesn't hurt.
Yes.
But at the same time, just the way that they do it, I mean, it's just I don't know. Like I said, I never seen an offensive line get consistent push like that on quarterbacks because they're moving guys off the line of scrimmage. It's not just a big scrum. They are literally pushing guys back. Yeah. I haven't seen that consistently. You might see it every now and then, but not every single time they do it. I'm like, Jiminy Christmas, you can't stop it. Literally can't stop it.
It's wild. All right. You know what else you can't stop? Blind Nil. And that's coming up next, right after we take this final break here on Outside the Trenches.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Outside the Trenches presented by our friends at Five Farms Irish Cream Liqueur. All right. It's Blind Nil. Nick, you started last week. I want to start with Big B. Let's start. What do you got for us?
Well, you know, a little fun. Again, I'm on the fun train these days.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, what is not your favorite sports movie, but the funniest sports movie? the funniest. I mean, I feel like the favorite, it's always the same. It's like Rudy or Remember the Titans.
That's a terrible movie. Rudy's a terrible movie. He's the
and I
most
think
whiny,
so too.
He's
but
the
I'm
most
from
whiny. Yeah,
I'm from Indiana.
You have to
like
it.
You
have to fake like it.
But I don't like it. I think it's ridiculous. And I'm like, this guy would never touch a football field in college. I don't care what he did. He would never touch a field.
But he would not get by me. He would never get by me.
No, not a chance. Because it would take one time in practice for somebody to say something. I would just be burying him every single play. But that's beside the point.
I digress.
But yeah, you're the funniest sports movie. And to me, the funniest sports movie is Major League. I think it is absolutely hilarious. Every bit of it is hilarious. Now, the second one I thought was horrible. But the first one, the original one, I mean, Willie Mays, Hayes, I mean, you got guys. I just thought all of it was absolutely hilarious. Just hilarious.
It was, it's funny. You say, because I immediately, like, I don't like baseball. Like, I think my wife loves the Royals, and she'll listen to it on the radio in, like, June. At night on when we're driving home, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a real Royals fan. It's amazing. And I don't like baseball. I never played it, was never good at it, everything like that. But two of my favorite movies, sports movies, are Kevin Costner for Love of the Game. It's a great rom-com. It's a fantastic sports movie. And Major League is by far the funniest. Like, there's not even a question. There are so many quotables, like Pedro Serrano and Harris, the backup pitcher, right? Where he's like, say, don't touch Joe Boo's drum. And every time I'm drinking at a bar and I'm saying, hey, bartender, Joe Boo needs a refill. There's so much comedy. And then look at Charlie Sheen. Remember Wild Thing, right? When he has to go to the nice restaurant with Jake Vaughn. And then they make him wear a tie, and he's wearing like a leather vest with and he's wearing a tie, and he goes, I feel like a banker in this, It's just so much comedy. And when what's his face, the coach, when they go, hey, you want to coach the Indians? And he's like, I don't know. I got another guy in the line about some white walls.
Yes.
So it's like this total total movie is just fantastically made.
I love it.
And I just love everything about it. Like, just so many personalities, and they really caught. I mean, look at the people. You have the president from 24. Right, you have the elite sniper is your catcher with knees, right, and then the sniper, Tom Berenger, and then you had Simon Phoenix from Demolition Man is your stolen base guy, and Willie Mays Hayes. It's just amazing, just great, just really good.
It's a good movie.
I don't think there's a greater sports movie. Tucker might have something from the late 2000s. When he was young.
so my first thought was actually Happy Gilmore. I think that's a pretty funny sports movie. But Major League is so incredible. It is such a good movie. But I also thought of a movie I think is funny that's not supposed to be funny is Draft Day. I think that movie is so comical because of how ridiculous it is. It's
Kevin
just like
Costner flop.
Yeah, it's just like it's such a ridiculous movie. It's like, why is there a love story thrown in the middle of it? Why is he drafting there's a lot going on in that movie. Just like draft strategy is just like all thrown off. Who wasn't it like the Cardinals GM that said like, yeah, that movie's pretty realistic? And I was like, hang on a second.
Yeah.
How are you running a draft room? Because that's not how it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to do research on your pick until the day of. That's insane.
It was crazy. And you're right. It was like a love story. And then I was like, but was it a love story?
Yeah.
I mean,
he was having an affair.
That's right. I'm like, what is going on with all of this? And they got a quarterback. And I'm like, I don't care what happened. There is no GM in the history of mankind that has taken an outside or a linebacker as number one pick. That is not, Lawrence Taylor, you're not taking that guy number one. I don't care what happened.
LeVar Arrington. Didn't he go number one?
Oh, yeah. He was 2, I think.
I wonder when the last time a linebacker went number 1 was.
Yeah. It had to have been LeVar Arrington. Had to have been. Or was it Courtney Smith? Courtney Johnson?
Courtney Brown was one. Yeah, he went
and then
one.
He was,
And
Cleveland.
then he was second. Yep.
He was. I mean, it stinks to be the number one pick.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Courtney
that's too
Brown.
bad. There's nowhere you will never get a linebacker even close like that anymore. So DNs are quarterbacks.
Correct. Correct.
That's what I thought was the justification someone tried to tell me was that it looks like that he's like a 3-4 outside linebacker, so he's he's an on the line stand up.
Yeah,
Right,
an edge.
right.
And I was
defender.
like, all right, do we have to go into scheme to justify this pick? Is that what we're doing now in a sports movie? We got to go into scheme to justify trading 3 first rounders. By the way, trading 3 first rounders for a linebacker.
That's crazy. All right, here's some honorable mention sports movies. Tell me what you think. Caddyshack. Does that count?
Absolutely. 100%. 1,000% it counts.
That's not sports, country club sport, right? It's not like you're thinking like this realm of like sports, but like that's a different like genre. That's just top 5 comedy, right? I mean, then does that mean it's like the best? Is that like saying U2's the best Christian rock band ever? Like is that like, can you throw it in that category?
I mean, Caddyshack is a close one. I mean, if Major League is 1 for me, but Caddyshack is like 1B.
It's a very good movie.
I love it.
1A to me.
Yeah, there you go.
It's that good because same thing. Quotables. Producer Nick said Waterboy. That's a good one. That movie annoys me. It really does. It annoys me. So yeah. What about Talladega Nights?
Yeah,
it's a good movie.
It's a good one too.
I don't really think about NASCAR as a sport, but I guess it is a sport. Yeah,
it's left turns. It's left turns. What about you guys might not have seen this, Big B, you might have Necessary Roughness with Scott Bakula from Quantum Leap. Tucker's never seen it. Tucker's never seen it.
I don't think I've seen
Ireland. Kathy Ireland is the kicker. And it's like it's a fantastic movie. It's the greatest premise because a 38-year-old has 1 year left of eligibility. And they recruit him to come back and get a year of eligibility and lead the team as a quarterback. And it still holds up.
You can watch it. You can still get some laughs out of it. It's really good.
You really could. Varsity Blues. It's more of a drama though, right? Can't really consider that.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like it. I thought the coach was a maniac, but I mean, I don't disagree that happened. I just thought it was a maniac. It just, I don't know. And you're right. It was too much drama. Too much drama.
Yeah. That could be it. That's really all I was looking. I just looked it up online. Okay. Here's a test. Blades of Glory. I mean,
it's a good one. It's very good.
It's very good. That's a good one. I like it.
I think this is something we might have missed. I think it holds up. I think Major League is just top.
Producer Nick with Dodgeball is a pretty solid one too.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a solid one.
Yeah, that's strong.
But if we're going Ben Stiller, I know it's not sports, but Zoolander is just to me one of the funniest movies about
funny.
Male modeling ever.
Hilarious.
That movie is hilarious.
Absolutely hilarious.
Very good. Okay, Nick, I want you to close it, so I'll go next.
All right.
This is like a hybrid series, hybrid not one. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I want to know your guys' favorite way to watch football. Because there's a lot of different ways to watch it, right? If you want to watch it in like a bar with a bunch of other like fans, if you want to watch it at home by yourself in your own room where you're not around anybody because you react a certain way, or if you just don't like to watch it at all, or if you like to be there in person, I want to know your guys' favorite way to watch football.
Well, I'll go ahead and go. It kind of depends on who I'm around. So, like, for instance, if it's just me and my wife is, to me, I believe she is the first or the best football fanatic wife because she knows that I'm going to go crazy. If I'm watching the Steelers, K-State, or Louisville, I'm going to yell, scream. Everything is the ref's fault. I am after it. And she will sit there and will not say a thing. And so she'll sit right next to me. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't react. She lets me yell and scream. And I find that to be soothing in a way because I'm going absolutely berserk. But I will say this, if I'm watching it with other guys that know football, I like that too, because we're calling plays. Why did they do this? What's this lineman thinking? The quarterback has got to see the blitz coming. What's he doing? So if I had to choose between the two, I think the first way, because I love my wife. And again, she lets me see. With my friends, I can't go berserk because they're going to think I'm nuts. Right. But with my wife, she lets me go berserk and doesn't say anything. So I think that's the best way for me.
Yeah, for me, the only thing I care about football wise is K-State, and I have to watch it either at my buddy's suite there because we have a good time, or I watch it at the house by myself. And I know my wife has given me multiple criticisms back in the day. She's like, "It's 10:30. Are you drinking bourbon?" And I'm like, "Yeah, K-State's on. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't care about time. The time is irrelevant. It's a flat circle, right? Like, I'll drink bourbon when I watch K-State at my house, and it's fantastic. Like, I could not watch in a environment around people who I don't know, because they would get like put to sleep, like if they said some dumb shit. And I'd be like, "Hey, I can't have you just sleep. Just get behind it, just whatever."
I get it. I love it.
And I'm like,
I love it.
And I'm yelling, and like my kids are like, "Daddy's cursing," all this stuff. But K-State gets my blood boiling. I stand up in my living room. I stand up and watch the whole K-State game. And then if it's NFL, I prefer to be at a friend's house. And I got a good buddy of mine went to K-State with, Ryan Lilja. I love watching games. I don't do it enough, but I love watching games with him because, and you might do this, if an O-lineman gets burnt, like we'll watch a Sunday night every now and again together. And if an O-lineman gets beat, it was like, "Ooh, dude, you know what I would have done there? I would have faked a knee injury." I got burnt. Someone can say stuff like that, where it's like, I would have faked a knee injury if I'd have got burned like that so bad or something like that. So just little things, right, like that, where just you can watch it. And like I like watching good offensive linemen. Like I won't watch football, but if there's a good offensive lineman, I'll watch a good offensive lineman, because it's a thing of beauty when you can understand what they're doing, what they're going through, and see what kind of power they have and mastery of their sport, their position. It's beautiful to me. Like I'll watch like a Thursday night game. If it was like Joe Thomas back in the day, or if it's like, Trent Williams, like I'll watch Thursday night then. Like I'll look, not the matchup, but the O-lineman involved and see who's playing.
Correct. Yeah.
I, in that same vein, I watched a lot of Penei Sewell when he was a senior at Oregon.
Junior. He sat out a senior year.
Right. A junior. Yeah, that's right. When in his final year, I should have said, but
final years.
I watched a lot of him because like they were like the only game on a lot of times, with the Pac-12 being like the Pac-12 After Dark, as we talked about at the top of the show. Like you got the opportunity to they would be the only game on TV, so I got to watch a lot of Penei Sewell. God, that guy's good. But anyway,
Detroit.
Yeah, he was going up against they had a joint practice, I think, with maybe the Jets. No, it was the Giants. It was Kayvon Thibodeau. And somebody had tweeted out like Kayvon Thibodeau burning Penei Sewell. I was like, that did not happen at all. I don't know if you've seen that video, Nick.
And you see the clip. I've seen the clip where he goes inside and everybody thinks he won. I'm like, no, he didn't. He's right in front of him. No, he did not win.
Right. That's the thing too. Like a lot of times in one-on-ones, Nick, we've talked about this a lot. Rush lanes are just like non-existent. Number one in one-on-ones. There's zero, like you'll see a guy go all the way outside and be like, "Yep, he won," and it's like, "No, he didn't." But like, you see that all the time, and then like that's what you're talking about too, Big B. That was my first reaction. He went inside, and I was like, "Okay, the guard's right there." Like that would be it. But even though if the guard was still there, he was still in front of him. Like he still stayed with him. So it was just like one of those things. I was like, "That's weird." Sorry to get off topic, but I really like Penei Sewell. How I like to watch football, when I think about like my like perfect watching football conditions and like day, it's like multiple screens, college football on type of day, right? And I'm just with my buddies. And Nick, as you mentioned, we've got a rule: if there's football on TV, you can drink. Doesn't matter what time. If there's football on TV, you can drink. That's the rule. That's the rule we follow. And
English Premier League is football, right? It's 6 a.m.
It's true.
Right?
Listen, I've gone to breweries for 6 a.m. watch parties for the Tottenham Hotspur. Buddy, those are some early mornings, but I did it for the vibes, and it was all worth it, honestly. Going to a brewery at 6 a.m. To watch a soccer game that's going on thousands of miles from where you are is a
Across the
wild
pond.
experience. Yeah, but I really do enjoy with buddies. Obviously, if I'm gonna watch, I'm a Mizzou fan, I know, but if I'm gonna watch a Mizzou game, I want to watch it with other Mizzou fans that I know. I'm not a big go to the bar type of guy and watch with a bunch of different people. Nick, as you mentioned, people say too much dumb stuff. I can't do that. You'll hear somebody say something that just like doesn't make any sense, but they think and they believe it so wholeheartedly. And you're just like, dude, stop talking. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right? You wanted This Is Sparta them from 300, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
just
Absolutely.
stop. Like, oh, what is he doing? That's holding. Like, I hate you. Like,
No,
here comes
no,
This Is
it's not.
Sparta. Yeah.
Please stop.
I almost This Is Sparta someone when I went and saw K-State play at Vanderbilt, and the guy in front of me was just being ridiculous, and he almost got just straight mule kicked right in his spine.
Because you were at Vanderbilt.
That too. And they lost.
Oh no. Also,
And
have you seen the
Vanderbilt-
picture? Go ahead.
No, I was just say Vanderbilt doesn't even know how to play football. So for anybody to be talking
Yes.
about football is ridiculous.
Yes, agreed.
Have you seen the picture of Vanderbilt? Vanderbilt's hosting a home game in week 0, by the way. Their home stadium is an active construction zone. Like it's a mess.
Are you serious?
They're hosting Hawaii week 0, and it's just in like I think 11 days is when they have their first home game. Kind of insane that college football's essentially here.
I love Saturdays. I love Saturdays. I love Saturdays more than Sundays, to be honest. Like I like
Saturdays
the
are
game. The game on Sunday, it is so much cleaner. It is so much better. It is so much more. It is so fluid. It's more evenly matched on Sundays, and it's better product. But the atmosphere on Saturdays is just unreal to me. It's unmatched, right? I mean, it's
100%.
That's what I like.
100%.
I'm gonna start going to bars watching games. By the way, I just might convince myself.
Well, the next time you go, text me. I'll come up with you, and we'll see what kind of trouble we can get into.
I can dig that. I can dig that. I like that.
Go.
PP. I can dig it. I can dig it for sure.
All right, Nick. Are you ready to take us home? Ready to bring us home?
Yes. This is weird, but I have a sports one.
Whoa.
And to me, with Tom Brady finally, did he retire this year or last year? I don't even know when it was, to be honest with you.
This year, I guess technically, this is his first season that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they did
No,
not play.
we're this first season, we're Tom Brady-less. So Tom Brady had some success outside of the Belichick umbrella, right? I mean, granted, we're going to put an asterisk on there because the Chiefs only had 4 of the original starters on offensive line. So I think that's different. But Tom Brady had success without Belichick. How important, right? I like that, right? How important is it for Belichick to sort of do the Kobe without Shaq, win one on his own without Brady? Or is it not even important at all?
I think it's important. I mean, my take, is I don't know how. I mean, they're not going to fire Belichick.
Right.
But I think Robert Kraft will say, look, doing it this way isn't working anymore. You need to make some changes either with your staff or something else because you have total control, but the way that you're doing it isn't working. So until it works, and when not being work, I don't know that they have to necessarily win a Super Bowl, but they got to be competitive in the playoffs. They got to win a couple games or a game in the playoffs. And number one, I don't think they have the quarterback to do that, but I think it's important. I think that's a great question, Nick. But I think that Belichick's got to do something because he did nothing before Brady got there, and he has done nothing after Brady got there.
Yes.
And it is very easy to say. Now, I know the first couple of Super Bowls they won, it was defense-oriented, and it was. However, the quarterback didn't lose you the games. I know that. He didn't lose you the games. So, I just think he's got to do something. I think he does.
One of my favorite bits that I've done is I've reduced every Tom Brady Super Bowl down to the kicker winning him the game. Like giving Adam Vinatieri the win for basically all of his
Carolina.
Super Bowls.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up. I think he might have to because Tom Brady did it, right? I think if Tom Brady didn't do it, then it might have been one of those things of like, well, that was a good run type of deal. But I don't think there's going to be like a discount to Bill Belichick in terms of his legacy, and there might have been a discount to Brady calling him a system quarterback, right? And I think people still do really call him a system quarterback, but it's really interesting. I don't know if I think he might have to. I think I agree with Big B. He might have to at least be competitive without him for some respect to be thrown his way. A little more respect, I should say. Obviously, Bill Belichick's one of the best ones to ever do it. But like, as you mentioned, if you have a quarterback for how long was he there? He was probably there longer than I've been alive, truthfully.
Yes, yeah.
But I mean, he was there for so long. It's hard not to put that at his feet, right? And to put that, say like Brady's kind of the reason you did that, because if you look at the track record before and after, that's tough. That's a tough one to do. So they're probably gonna have some success for Belichick to, and I don't know how much that he really cares about that, right? He probably doesn't care about it, anything at all. But like for people, for the casuals that comment under every single post, you ever see that underneath like teams' posts? There's like always Pickensburg responding to like to somebody saying like mid or something like that. They're always going to respond. I was going to respond. Belichick didn't do it without Brady.
It's just the truth.
That's going to be truth, right? That's just going to be one of those things that the trolls are going to use against Belichick forever.
And you got to give him. So I give him his due, right? Because he still managed personalities and still won these Super Bowls, assembled these great defenses. Assembled some great offense. I mean, the best offense lost to Eli Manning, and the feckless Giants, right? So it's like twice. And so to me, it's one of those things where he has to get. I would say he's don't get it twisted. He's a Hall of Fame coach. He deserves his place. The Ring of Honor, all that stuff. But for him personally, man, he's got to get to the AFC Championship game. I would say for him to sort of, okay, I can do it without Brady, right? And I'm with you, Big B. Mac is not. I don't think so.
Is it Bailey Zappi?
I don't. What do they? I mean, I just
they're
don't
the
know
same
what
quarterback.
Really,
they are. Zappy can move a little better, but that's
which
it.
is good.
They look the same too.
They literally look the same. They could be. They look like brothers. It's crazy.
That is actually insane. That whole situation last year with like I almost said Mac Miller, Mac Jones getting hurt, and then Bailey Zappi coming in, and then putting Mac Jones back in, and then the fans wanting Bailey Zappi back in, and then actually putting Bailey Zappi back in.
Unreal.
Wild.
Unreal.
That's what happens when you have a DC as your offensive coordinator, though. So I mean,
the arrogance to do something like that, to have a defensive coordinator be the offensive coordinator, and I'm like, what are you doing? Just hire a guy, but nope, just wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. We're gonna do it his way, and it did not work. It was awful.
I don't know if it's going to be any better this year for him, truthfully. They signed, again, we'll mention, they signed Zeke.
Their defense will be good. Again, the Patriots' defense will be good again. Yeah. They'll be able to run it, but when it comes to, 3rd and 7, look out. Look out.
Yeah. There's no teeth. There's no teeth in that offense.
Yeah.
You're not, it's not like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen where you're like, damn, this is tough. It's like, oh, we got this. We get him 3rd and it's okay. We're good. Like,
they might be able to play spoiler to a team like to the Bills or the Jets. Maybe one game they catch them all. They catch them because especially those teams, they got to play them twice. They might be able to play spoiler. I trust Bill Belichick enough to like scheme that up, right? Matchup wise. But they're not going to make any noise in terms of playoff contention.
Yeah.
No,
unfortunately, especially with that division too, one of the toughest divisions in football.
Oof. Yeah.
Now we've officially made the podcast full circle with that comment right there. Appreciate that. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. This week's episode of Outside the Trenches, presented by our friends at Five Farms. Go check them out. Holiday Distillery. They've got a great line of products. If you want more than just Irish cream, go check them out. Holiday Distillery up in Weston, Missouri, a little hidden gem up there if you are up in the Kansas City area, up just north of the airport. So go check them out there. For Nick Leckey and Brien Hanley, I am Tucker Franklin. Thank you for listening to Outside the Trenches. We'll be back next week with another episode live at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. That's when we do it. If you want to join us live, it's always available for you to listen to after the fact. But until next time, I'll talk to you later.